All right. Feel like I'm further away from you guys than usual. All right, so it's been a while since we've just sat down and talked about being a furry for once. We've been going on and on about furry conventions and fursuits and the like, but today, let's just talk about being a furry. Specifically, I want to go over a direct message I got some time ago from someone thinking about getting more active in the fandom. In short, it went, "Hey Finn, you are the best furry YouTuber in the world." Nah, I'm just kidding. It really went like, "Hey Finn, I'm curious about joining the furry fandom, but I'm afraid I won't fit because I'm an introvert. Everyone seems to be very social and make friends super easily in this fandom, but I am a lot more reserved and don't like being the center of attention. Is this fandom worth getting into if it seems to favor those who are the opposite of me?" Like I said, I get DMs about starting out in the fandom all the time, but this one required a little bit more thoughtful of an answer than usual. So I thought, why not make a video and let's walk through it together. Can you find a home for yourself in this fandom as an introvert? I really like this question because of how layered it is. It might seem simple, can you be an introverted furry? But there are a lot of preconceived notions that are baked into that question that are worth unpacking. Let's start with the biggest idea that we're grappling with here first. Does the furry fandom favor extroverts? And if we assume that favor means meeting other people and making friends in this community, then yeah, the furry fandom does favor extroverts, by a lot actually. The thing is though, that's not really the fandom's fault. In many cases, society as a whole favors extroverts as well. This is particularly true here in the West, where the fandom grew out of and still sees its strongest base. But in almost every aspect of our lives where we have to interact with other people, those interactions simply favor those who are more extroverted. I mean, think about it. Think about the types of classrooms you grew up in. Large rooms, many students, a focus on group activities, being asked and praised to share your ideas with the class, with the threat of being called on forcibly if you didn't. Those high stimulation environments are the kinds where naturally outgoing people will thrive, while those who are naturally more reserved will struggle through it more. The same can be said when you're out of school and navigating the work world. There are certain advantages that people who are more social and comfortable being around other business people have than people who are not. What is that phrase that they always say? It's all about the people you know, right? Even that term by itself implies that you have to be social enough to find the right people to know. And if that's something that doesn't come naturally to you, you're losing out on opportunities that might not be available to you at first glance. It's no wonder why studies have shown that the more outgoing someone is, the more they tend to advance in their careers. And when you combine all of this, it leads to this interesting social perception where being an introvert is seen as a negative trait. Being introverted is often misunderstood as being shy or antisocial, both of which are fundamentally different traits than a preference of not speaking up immediately and preferring time to yourself. But those stigmas remain in our society today, and therefore, as a whole, we tend to reward those who are more outgoing and vocal and punish those who are not. This all ties back into the furry fandom itself because the extroverts in this fandom find themselves very fast and thrive as a result. In a fandom that's designed to have its members meet and hang out with other people, those who are more naturally comfortable meeting and talking with strangers are going to enjoy the environment of this fandom a lot easier than someone who may need some more time to break out of their social shell. That being said, even though that may be the case, I personally believe that scenarios like that happen a lot less than one might think. In short, based on my own admittedly anecdotal evidence, I think there are actually a lot more introverts in this fandom than most may realize, maybe even more than the number of extroverts in total. Of course, I have no real empirical numbers to truly back this idea up, but I will say that I do understand why at first glance it might seem like this fandom is filled with extroverts. Let's actually go back to how the original question starting this whole conversation was presented. Everyone seems to be very social and make friends easily in this fandom. From the outside looking in, furries really do present themselves as a group of extroverts. I mean, if you look at just furry stuff online, you're going to see a bunch of people in fursuits either at cons or other places hanging out with a bunch of other people. Even moving online, it's a flawed measurement, but it's the one that people use, but the more well-known furries that have large followings on social media tend to also fall into this category, where they often make posts with a lot of their friends whom they know and hang out with. But at least the way I see it, those types of people are actually the vocal minority. A vast majority of this fandom are people we don't see all the time. Think of it like an iceberg. The top, the ones that everyone outside the community sees, are the extroverts who loudly and proudly share their lives online, typically hanging out with other extroverts. But as we move down here, where the bulk of the iceberg and subsequently the bulk of the fandom is, there are people who may not feel so inclined to share everything that's going on with them in the fandom. They may have their little group of friends that don't share everything that they do, or they just may prefer not to be as outgoing about how their life as a furry is. So if you didn't know any better, you wouldn't even realize that most of the people in this fandom actually fall more into this category, under the water's surface. And I have a pretty good hunch that this is the case because I myself am an introvert. I do my best work when I'm alone and don't have to talk to anybody around me. It's a lot easier for me to stay in and watch a movie at home than to go out with friends on the weekend, and this is the biggest one for me personally. Being around other people takes a lot of energy out of me. As much as I love going to them, furry conventions are one of the most exhausting activities that I do throughout the year. And it's not physical exhaustion, it's purely mental exhaustion. Here's a funny thing about me. Before I go out at a con in suit, or just to meet friends outside of suit, I will almost always just sit still for a few minutes or pace back and forth in my room before going out to see people. And I do that as a way to mentally prepare to be social around people who want to see me. You can think about it like this, before any performance, whether it's sports or playing at a concert or performing in a play, you warm up beforehand, right? You might get some extra throws in, go over your scales, or rehearse your lines one more time, right? That's essentially what I'm doing before I go out and hang out with people in this fandom. I need to allocate the mental resources needed to spend time hanging out with them. And once that energy runs out, I have to get to a place by myself to recharge, otherwise I'm just gonna crash. And yet, even with all of that being said, I would say that I'm very happy with where I'm at in the fandom. I've met some of my best friends in this community and seemingly meet new ones every time I go to a furry social event, even if I do end up going alone. So I'm sure you're putting two and two together here, and to answer the original question posed, yes, you can be an introvert and still thrive in this fandom, absolutely. But that comes with a little bit of a caveat. It's going to take some work that extroverts in this fandom might not have to deal with nearly as much. I will just be honest with you here, to get the most out of this fandom, you will need to be able to handle yourself in social situations. Again, you could get a lot from this fandom by being an introvert, but remember what we went over earlier. Being an introvert does not mean you have bad social skills or are antisocial altogether. If you are antisocial or actively avoid social interactions, you will hit a ceiling in this fandom quite quickly, mainly because those behaviors are antithetical to what most people in this fandom are here for. Sorry, I gotta relax with the SAT words. If you're just interested in the art and making a persona and simply like the idea of animals with human features, then sure, you'll be content in this fandom. But if you want to make friends and hang out with other furries, it's going to be a struggle for you. Now, the good news is that of all the environments that I can think of in life, the furry fandom is one of the most welcoming environments to anyone trying to be more social. A lot of people say that you shouldn't try being something that you're not when joining this fandom, but in cases like these, I actually disagree with that sentiment. Let me explain. This fandom encourages being different versions of yourself, trying out different personalities and traits to see if they fit. That's part of the reason why furries are so attached to their persona. For many of them, they represent someone whom they're trying to be, and they use that persona as a way to practice being that better version of themselves. Heck, it's the same for me. Finn, as a persona, is a lot more outgoing and social than the person who's underneath this fursuit. But this fursuit and Finn as an extension of that personality have been instrumental in helping me underneath be more comfortable and confident in social situations, so much so that people have actually mistaken me for an extrovert before. Now, how do you get there? Well, just like any skill, it's going to take practice and trial and error, and the road to being more comfortable socially is going to be different for everyone. That being said, it's something that you shouldn't feel pressure to rush, because everyone's path in this fandom is going to be a little different. It's not a race or a competition to get as many friends as you can in this fandom, and trust me, if you try to do too much in too little time, you'll end up socially burning out. If you're like me, it might take 2 or 3 years to be comfortable socializing in this fandom, while for others, it might just be a couple months. But like I said, this fandom is really great for that social progression because you don't have to dive into the deep end immediately. A lot of people will start by just sticking to talking in asynchronous social communities like Discord or Telegram groups. And as they get more comfortable, they may work their way up to voice chats or other synchronous online activities, and then continue to something like VR chat and eventually an in-person social event. Though, now that I'm thinking about it, I will let you on a little bit of a secret. If you want a bit of a cheat code to finding more friends in this fandom faster, try to befriend someone who's already an extrovert. There's an entire meme about this in this fandom, and it's funny because it's true. Extroverts will adopt you into the social side of this fandom and present you with many opportunities to find other friends just by the nature of their extroversion. Again, it really is all about who you know. So yes, even if you're not the most naturally socially inclined, you can and will find other friends in this fandom. It will just take some work. And I don't mean that lightly, it really is work. You really do have to make a concentrated effort to put yourself out there and not be afraid to make some social mistakes before finding your social groove in this fandom. The good news is you really don't have to be anyone special to do that. One thing that's really cool that kind of goes understated in this fandom is that it's really good at finding what's unique and special about you and pulling it out for other people to bask in, even if you don't see it yourself immediately. So you don't need a fursuit or need to be a talented artist or anything to find good friends in this fandom. All you need is a genuine personality and the courage to try socializing around other furries. And that's also to say that if you don't or can't work on those social skills right now, that's still alright as well. If being social makes you anxious to the point where it's unhealthy, or that type of effort of working on your social skills doesn't sound worth it to you, that's perfectly fine. There's still enough to do in this fandom to call yourself a furry. But if you think you're doomed to be alone in this fandom because you're an introvert, that's simply not going to be the case. You can not only survive, but thrive as an introvert in the furry fandom. It will just take a little more effort to navigate a community that favors extroverts. much like real life. Alright, that's been it. Thank you for watching. I'll catch you in the next one, but until then, stay wild out there. Peace.